Okay, yes, I am really, really late on the podcast. I was supposed to be doing this every other Wednesday, but 2 under 2 is literally kicking my fucking ass. Okay, like it's hard. It's hard. I'm fucking tired and I can't keep up. It's like I explained to Rachel today because I'm the working person, but I work from home and I kind of have like a free schedule. So her sister, right? They're a couple where her sister is a stay-at-home mom and her brother-in-law, her sister's husband, is a firefighter. And I explained to her today, like, because I feel so overwhelmed, and like I'm behind on the podcast, I'm behind on the newsletter, I barely post anything. It's just like yada yada. I'm like, I have all the responsibilities of Amy, which is her sister, and all the responsibilities of Zach, which is her brother-in-law. Because I watch the kids full time. Like I'm doing this during nap time. I'm like trying to be quiet because once Laguna wakes up for a nap, I got to be dad. It's like I have all the responsibilities of both of them. And so it's just a lot on my brain. Anyway, so that's my sorry if you even listen to my podcast and you expect it every other Wednesday. I'm going to get back on schedule. This is my commitment to you, and I'm going to really do my best. But today's podcast episode is actually going to be about empathy. And I feel like everything keeps kind of swaying like the universe is picking what the next episode is going to be about, regardless of my plan. And I actually kind of love that because it's giving me topics that like I really want it to be about. And we're choosing empathy because of the LA fires. And I just think that I've seen a lot of empathy in the world, but at the same time, like I've seen there's tons of memes about the LA fires too. And it's, like I'm all one for a good laugh, but I think that we struggle as human beings maybe to understand what empathy is. And this is like a key component of parenting. Like if you don't have empathy, you're not going to be dad of the year, and you're definitely not going to be a good partner to raise a kid with. Like with no empathy, you're kind of fucked. All right. And more than that, your kid is fucked and your partner's fucked too, because if you're the guy with no empathy, like you're just going to not be it. And so quickly, I want to define empathy for you in what I'll call my own words. And it is my own words because I'm not reading Webster's. But empathy is your ability to be in someone else's shoes and feel the emotions that they are feeling. And I'm going to use the word empathize with them. And so I think this gets mixed up with sympathy, or like sympathy is really what it gets mixed up for, where you feel bad for someone or you're like, damn, that's trash. Empathy is like, holy fuck, I know what that's like, or whether you don't, right? So I've lost my brother, so I know what it's like to lose someone very close to you that you love. So I empathize with a lot of those people, but I've never lost my mother. Rather, I don't know my father. I've never met him, so I've never lost my father. So it's hard for me to empathize with people who lose parents, but it's not hard for me because I'm able to put myself in their shoes and try to feel what they're feeling, right? And empathy is kind of like this key that unlocks every door. And it's almost frustrating trying to be the guy with empathy because it's like you can never be empathetic enough. And this is where it's going to get like your brain's going to start to do fucking backflips. So put on your seatbelt, fucking start moving your feet on your run, and really listen to what I'm trying to say about empathy. Because this is an endless road. This is a fucking endless road of millions and millions of miles where you could just always be the most empathetic guy in the room. And it requires high emotional intelligence to be this guy. And we're going to go down a list of like, 1, what empathy is. I'm going to give you some examples. 2, how you're going to use empathy in your family. And 3, how are you going to teach your kid empathy? And I don't know yet because Laguna's so young, but I'm going to try to tell you my goal, right? And so let's talk about what empathy is, right? So we already said being in someone's shoes and trying to feel the emotions that they feel. The reason why this is kind of an endless road and what makes it so hard is that, let's use the LA fire victims, for example, right? So you want to be empathetic to them, but something may get in the way. Like, obviously, a lot of famous people lost their homes. And this is where like I really want to use empathy because I saw so many people online being like, they're rich as fuck and they have so much money, they could just rebuild it. And it's like, dude, that is not empathetic at all to their situation, regardless of where you're at in your life and how much money that they have. Because remember, everything is relative, right? And so if you live in a fucking cardboard box and I burned it down, that may hurt your heart the same as if someone has $30 million in their bank account and they lost their $200,000 home. I know it feels like, oh, they could just replace it, but our heart our heart is so relative. As humans, we have such a relative heart to our situation. And so you got to be able to put yourself in their shoes and say, what would it be like if I lost my home, the place that I live, whether it's a humble abode, whether it's a piece of shit, whether it's a fucking motel? What would it be like if I lost it all tomorrow? And granted, they lost it in an extremely tragic way, right? So just imagine in a really tragic, really like fear-inducing way. And you got to put yourself in their shoes and think, well, fuck, that would suck, regardless of your ability to replace it, right? And so you kind of got to start taking all the buts out of your mind and all the buts out of your sentence. And I'm not talking about asses, right? I'm talking about but this, but that. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? And so you can't go, but they have enough money to replace it. That's not empathetic. Because when they lost their home, they didn't think, but I got enough money to replace it, right? They just thought like, fuck, I just lost my home. And you got to sit and dwell in that emotion and try to feel what they're feeling. And that's just merely for fire victims, right? So let's bring it into what it is as a partner, right? And so it can be hard because this is where it can be really hard, predominantly for women, I think, and the mother in the house, because it's somewhat hard for her, I think, sometimes to be empathetic to her husband's situation of maybe him not being confident with the baby. And so I think I argue enough that women aren't born with just this how to fucking raise a baby handbook, right? Like, men don't realize that women literally fucking learn and they go through trials and tribulations to be the best mothers possible, and that men need to subject themselves to those same trials and tribulations, that same aspect of like, I'm in the shits, in the trenches with my kid in order to become the dad they want to come. And men don't do that enough, right? Because they're not empathetic to what women go through. I understand that. I'm saying, but I do think that I'm a proponent. I'm misandrist. Trust me, I'm on that side. So stay with me if I'm starting to talk about women and you're like, oh my God, fucking, I can't stand this guy. Just stay with me. I think when men aren't confident with the baby, or, like I said, in another podcast episode, I kind of talked about how when I go to the doctors, like, they don't even look at me. They just talk to Rachel because they could give a fuck what I got to say about the pediatrician. They don't care what dad has to say about the baby because they assume I'm at home not being a parent. And that's what they've been subjected to. But men kind of go through this phase of like, no one fucking cares, bro. Like, you're not the guy, you're not the default parent. And sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. And so I think women might need to look at a man's situation and be like, all right, this fucker really doesn't know. So what would it be like if everyone just assumed I didn't know what the fuck to do with my baby? And actually, women go through that a lot when like grandmas and like mother-in-laws are like, put socks on that, right? It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, I know what I'm doing with my baby, right? And so I think as a parent, you can kind of learn like, okay, he doesn't feel confident changing a diaper. Society tells him he doesn't have to. What would it be like to be in a situation where society tells me I don't have to change a diaper? I'm probably not good at it because I've never cared for anything. I'm rough around the edges. I'm not caring and maternal by nature. I didn't have a little sister, whatever, right? And so given all that information, you got to feel what they feel. Like, fuck, they probably feel super insecure about this. Maybe they do want to help out, but they don't because they're so insecure and so scared. They're scared of the baby. They're scared of fucking something. And then that can kind of put you in a position to be like, oh shit, that's how you feel. So next time you approach them, be like, hey, I know it must feel like really overwhelming to try to do this, or like, hey, I'm gonna go get my nails done. You must be really overwhelmed trying to keep the baby by yourself. Like, I think people constantly make jokes at the man, like, oh, left him with dad, right? So you assume that you don't have to work as hard as me, or maybe people put you down in those jokes and you see those jokes online, so you think it's acceptable to be a halfway parent, and I want you to know it's not, and you're bringing yourself down to their level, right? And on the other hand, let's talk about as men, right? Maybe I think sometimes, I'm not going to say we, because I do not sit on this side of the aisle, but I think maybe men sometimes think, well, they're born with a maternal instinct. Well, they had the baby in their stomach for 9 months. Like, that prepared them, right? At what point in the stomach was your wife changing her stomach's diaper? Like, never, right? Like, if this is your wife's first kid and she didn't have a little sibling and she didn't have baby cousins and she never nannied, this is going to be her first experience with a baby, and she's going to have a lot of questions and have a lot of anxiety, right? And you need to put yourself, like, imagine, be like, what would it be like if I held a human in my stomach for 9 fucking months. The baby comes out and I literally don't know what to do with it. You know what I mean? Like it would be so overwhelming. It would be so overwhelming. It's like 15 years go by. This is the perfect analogy. 16 years of your life pass of you riding in a car. And when it's time for you to drive, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. It's overwhelming. You assume you know what it's going to be like to get behind that wheel, but you never have. And once you do, you're like, holy shit. Once you hit the gas and the brakes for the first time, you're like, how the fuck am I going to control this thing? Sometimes you make mistakes. But you've been in a car for 16 years. Why don't you get it? Right? And that's why it's essential, that parent that's yelling at their kid when they're trying to learn how to drive, take yourself back to the first time you were trying to learn how to drive. That's what empathy is. Have we set the groundwork for what empathy is? Okay. So let's bring it into our relationship, right? And so I think empathy can be used for the situations that I gave where like it's your first time changing it. But I think more often than not, empathy needs to be used on a day-to-day basis. But like, what is this person going through? So I'm going to tell you like a real life story, right? Because that's best case scenario. Yesterday, I felt fucking overworked and underpaid, right? I've been talking a lot with Rachel about how it's hard having all the financial load and then because I don't take off parenting. Like I should be going to a coffee shop probably and working twice a week, like literally 6 hours on my laptop, 8 hours on my laptop, working content ideas, stuff like that. And I don't do that because, honestly, I don't think we're in the position to leave. I don't think it's smart to leave my kids alone and leave Rachel with no help, right? Like what? 2 under 2 is fucking hard. It's hard. Rachel goes to school on Thursdays for like 3 hours because hour there, hour of school, hour back. And it's like that, those 3 hours, she's so nervous for me. Like, is he going to be okay? I'm nervous. I'm like, fuck. I hope both of them aren't hungry at the same time. I hope Laguna doesn't hit Bear. Like, it's a lot, right? So for me to just dip for 8 hours, it's like, but a lot of families are fucking, I could get a job working 40 hours a week and I got to go, sis. And you're just going to have to survive. And so we're blessed. Don't get me wrong, but I've been feeling a lot of this pressure, right? Because I bear the financial load and I also bear the load of a stay-at-home dad, essentially. And yesterday I bared so much of that load. I was a pissy fucker, right? Rachel was up all night. So yesterday's Tuesday. Rachel's up all Monday night. Was yesterday Tuesday? Yeah. Rachel's up Monday night into Tuesday morning. I'm up as well for like one of the wake ups. And I think she did 2 of the wake ups, including the one, but she stays up longer because she's got to pump, right? And pumping it's hard on the body. Breastfeeding is hard on the body. So she's expending quite a bit more calories and energy than I am by changing Bear and reswaddling him, right? Because she's got to pump. So she's tired. I'm trying to work, but I can't work because Laguna's screaming in her crib. Rachel can't get to Laguna because she's with Bear. I go put Laguna down. I realize Rachel's super tired. I take Bear, let Rachel nap. Laguna wakes up. I bring Laguna to Rachel. Rachel asks to nap longer. I take Laguna and Bear back. By the time Rachel wakes up, I got to go to the gym. I hired a coach. I don't want to waste his money. I go to the gym. I'm in a pissy fucking mood. Not at Rachel, not at Laguna, not at Bear, just that I have like so much to fucking worry about, right? And Rachel goes to Walmart. She's honestly, Rachel's the only thing keeping the vibes up. Like, she's in a good mood, thank God, because if she wasn't in a good mood, I really would be a fucking terror. So thank God she's keeping vibes up for me. And I'm not empathetic at all to her that she didn't sleep the night before. I'm just thinking in my head, like, here I fucking go. I'm just working my ass off. Like, kind of what I was feeling internally is like my breaks. So this is like considered a break from child work for me. I get to go do my podcast. And if I go to the gym, I get to go to the gym. Those are my breaks from childcare. As opposed to, it's hard for me to nap, so I don't really nap during the day. So like Rachel, her break might be like, hey, go take a hot shower, take a nap. Mind you, Rachel's 5 weeks postpartum. So like, she obviously deserves all this. So like, again, I'm not trying to come off like an asshole. I wasn't empathetic to what Rachel was probably going through, is what I'm getting at. So I'm in a pissy mood at night and calmly, but like, I'm just like, my day looks so much different than yours. Like, my breaks look like this, yada, yada, yada. And she's like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know that you felt that way. You didn't really tell me. And I took a nap because I stayed up all night. Like, pumping's really hard. And I'm like, fuck. Like, I didn't even think what would it be like to have to wake up, pump milk out of my tits, put it in a container, go get a bottle, and then every time my son cries, I worry if I have enough milk, and I know it's my responsibility to make the milk. I didn't think about any of this, right? And then I take a nap because I'm so fucking tired, and my boyfriend tells me I can take a nap, but then when I wake up, he's kind of in a bad mood. I don't know what I did. I just needed to sleep. I'm sorry. It's like I didn't think about any of that. I'm just in a pissy fucking mood because I'm also tired, right? And so I didn't have any empathy in that situation, and it backfired. It hurt her feelings when I brought up the way I felt. She's like, dude, you can lean on me for help. Like, I didn't know. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you know what I mean? And it's because I was thinking all about how I felt and not about how she felt. And maybe if I thought about how she felt, I would understand why she did what she did. And that would help me understand why I feel the way I feel. And so empathy is more on a day-to-day thing. And what I mean by that is like each day requires a new amount of empathy and maybe empathy for new things. And so, you know, I might tell Rachel, you can even look at empathy like this. Like I might take a picture of Rachel and she might say, hey, don't post that. And I think, what, you don't want me posting you? Like, what the fuck is your problem? I'm like social media is like, come on. Like, but am I thinking about how maybe she feels in her skin postpartum, 2 babies in 2 years? Probably not. Right. And so like empathy is such a key and critical thing to bring to your day-to-day situation with your partner, because if you don't, you're going to be the asshole. And that's going to kind of move us into kids. And like, this is, I think we also use the word like regulation. Like, how can you emotionally regulate? Not only how can you emotionally regulate your child when they're having a tantrum, how can you emotionally regulate yourself to not get overwhelmed when your child's having a tantrum? And honestly, the key is beyond emotional regulation, which is just something like you don't have to put deep thought into. Well, it takes deep work, but once you do the deep work, I don't know that you have to put deep thought into. But I think it's all a construct or like foundationally built off of empathy. And what I mean by that is like when Laguna throws her food on the ground right after I make it, I want to fucking throw it back at her. You know what I mean? Not very empathetic though, because I'm not really thinking what it's like to be a fucking 1-year-old that can't talk, that maybe just wants her daddy to feed her. Like she can't talk. She can't speak English. So you got to put myself in her shoes. Okay, what is it like to be a 1-year-old? I can't talk. I also can't tell my daddy that I like or don't like this food. I can't tell my daddy I'm not hungry yet. I can't tell my daddy I don't want to eat till I have water. So I'm just going to throw it on the ground. I don't know what else to do. You know, and it's like without us being able to build off that foundation of empathy, it would be hard for me to regulate. Thankfully, it's like I don't always, and what I'm saying is I don't always think like, what is it like to be a 1-year-old when she throws her food? But I'm able to regulate because I've built a foundation of empathy with my child, right? And you got to continue to build a foundation of empathy because your child's going to put you through some trying times. Like one of the most empathetic times of my life was when I was sleep coaching Laguna, because she was a fucking terror before we sleep coached her. She would not transfer in her crib. I'm like, girl, please let your daddy put you in your crib and walk away. Like all I've done all fucking day is play with you. I need some time to go shower. I need some time to relax, please, baby. Because she doesn't have the ability to be empathetic. I recently read somewhere, and you could Google this, I don't know what age, but I think it's between like 5 and 7 that kids even develop the ability to be empathetic. Now, kids can feel bad for someone like, oh, that's sad. Like, oh no, Barney got punched in the face. That's so sad. But it takes a while for them to feel empathetic for someone like, oh, that's how they feel. Now I feel sad because I feel like they feel. And so I know Laguna doesn't have that ability. So she's not thinking in her head like, oh, my daddy's probably so tired. I can't imagine having to play with me. She doesn't give a fuck. And so you got to be able to have empathy for your child, like in an unwavering amount. And I'm going to talk about why empathy is an endless road at the end of the podcast. So please stay for that, because if you don't hear me say it, you're going to be like, Ricky, I tried to go on this empathy journey with you, and I'm so fucking fed up and tired of being empathetic that I just want to punch someone. So stay with me and I'll talk about why it's an endless road so that you can at least know you're validated. But, so yeah, you got to have empathy for your kids. And, I think that it was a really trying time when I was sleep coaching Laguna, because if I wasn't able to be empathetic, I don't think I ever would have been able to get through what I had to do. You know what I mean? Which was fucking really stick it out with her. I have videos about my sleep coaching. That's what I had to do. And it was hard. And being empathetic helped me get through that, because I just kept telling myself, like, she's just a little baby. She doesn't know. She doesn't know. And you'll hear that term. And it's funny. That term is rooted in empathy. And so sometimes your partner will remind you. My mom will remind me sometimes, like if Laguna does something, like say she throws food at my mom's house or she hits Bear, right? I'm like, yo, Laguna, baby. And my mom or Rachel might be like, hey, she doesn't know. And I'm like, fuck, that statement right there, hey, she doesn't know, is rooted in empathy. One statement that me and Rachel have between each other that I believe is rooted in empathy is like, hey, I'm just trying my best. We'll say that sometimes to each other. Like, I remember one time Rachel said it to me in the middle of me being like frustrated. This is like a year and a half ago. And I was like, oh my God, you're just trying your best. I'm giving you shit right now because I'm giving you my opinion, whether it's good enough or not. And you're just trying your best. And I'm like, holy fuck, I'm an asshole. And I think we started that phrase because it's rooted in empathy. So like now, you know, I might do something wrong, or I don't know, maybe I don't get the kitchen clean or whatever. And Rachel's talking to me about it, or like, hey, I need this, or I need that. And I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm just trying my best. And she might be like, fuck, I didn't realize you were just trying your best. My bad. You know what I mean? It's like rooted in empathy. The same way the phrase, hey, they don't know. They don't know any better. They don't know no better. We'll hear that sometimes. They don't know no better. She doesn't know no better. That's rooted in empathy. And you gotta build on top of that. You gotta extrapolate that concept and continue to build on the foundation of like, she don't know no better. So that's my spiel on empathy. I want to talk about how it's an endless road though, because I think if we don't start to realize how far this road of empathy can go, it can get really mixed up with like having no self-esteem, and it can get really mixed up with like, okay, when the fuck can I cut this off, right? So let me give you a good example. Someone we can never have empathy for, right? Like someone that commits SA, sexual assault, right? I will not have empathy for you because you've made it. I cannot, my feet will never go in those shoes. I don't even want to put my feet in your shoes to understand what it felt like to have that urge, because I think you're a piece of shit. I'm never going to side with you. I don't think you're a good person. Like, you know what I mean? But I also think that something has to be clinically wrong with you to force your body on someone else. But I'm getting off on some other shit, because remember, boundaries are still important regardless of empathy, right? You can have empathy for someone without saying what they did was okay. Does that make sense? Right. So if Laguna hits Bear, I can have empathy that she's a 1-year-old and she doesn't really understand. It doesn't make her hitting Bear okay. I can't just let it go, right? Like I still have to be like, hey, that's not how we use our hands. Let's fucking use our hands to clap. Right. That's what we've been doing recently. And so the reason why I say empathy is an endless road, because when you get in the area of like full grown adults and not babies, because you can kind of tell yourself like, oh, they're babies, right? When you get in the road of full grown adults and like maybe you're trying to have empathy in your relationship and you think, I asked my husband to load the dishwasher and he did. Okay. Me and Rachel argue about how you load the dishwasher, because I think the way she loads it, I'm like, that's not how you load a fucking dishwasher. And the way she does it, she's like, all the dishes get clean. And I'm like, true, but that's just not, it's just like, I'm a weirdo. I'm like, that's not how you do it. Right. And so empathy is an endless road, because I could be like, all right, well, she didn't know how to load it, so it's okay, right? And then maybe, or that's not the endless road, sorry. Maybe she asked me to load the dishwasher, right? And I don't do it the right way and I fuck it up. Okay. The way I do it's fine. But let's just say I'm an incompetent husband and I'm using weaponized incompetence. And she's like, hey, can you load the dishwasher? I do it. She wakes up in the morning. It's all fucked up. And she goes, okay, he didn't rinse off any of the food, but I guess that's, his mom never taught him how to load the dishwasher. So let me be empathetic. I'm going to teach him instead and he'll do it right the next time. Cool. So she teaches me yada, 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 yada. She says, hey, can you pick up the kids on your way home? And I forget, right? Because I'm really stressed about work and yada, yada. And she goes, all right. He's really stressed about work. I can't imagine being the guy bearing the financial load. Like he makes mistakes sometimes. He forgot to pick up the kids. No worries. Well, when I get home from picking up the kids, you confront me and you say, hey, did you forget the kids? And I'm like, what? And you're like, did you not pick up the kids? Like, what happened? And I'm like, oh my God, I'll go back right now. And I come back home and I'm in a pissed off mood because I had to go back, right? And you're like, hey, like I wanted to show you how to do the dishwasher because it didn't get clean and yada, yada. I know you got a lot on your mind because you forgot to pick up the kids. And I'm like, I start going off on you, cussing you out. Right. And you're like, whoa, what the fuck? And then you're empathetic and you're like, okay, Ricky told me to be empathetic. He must be really stressed. And then he got embarrassed because he didn't pick up the kids. And now he's embarrassed about the dishwasher. So he's clearly just calling me a dumbass bitch because he's embarrassed. and you're like, hey babe, sorry, I didn't realize you were going through all that stress. Like, appreciate it, right? Like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, yeah, thanks for saying sorry. Like, just leave me the fuck alone. And I go and watch my football game, right? And you're like, all right, well, I guess I'll cook dinner alone tonight, feed the kids by myself. And, I just want to be empathetic. Ricky told me to be empathetic, so I just want to understand where he's coming from. So I'm watching my football game by myself, and you're like, hey, are you going to come eat dinner with us? And I'm like, nah, I don't want to eat with you guys. I'm just going to stay in here and drink a beer. You're like, all right, he doesn't want to eat dinner with us because he's embarrassed, yeah, etc. And you're empathetic. Well, this empathy road can kind of go for a long fucking time if you can't tell, right? So now you're putting yourself to sleep. I sleep on the couch. I'm drunk. And you're like, well, he must have got drunk because he was embarrassed. He had a hard day. It was a long day. I wake up in the morning and I ask you why breakfast isn't ready, or why didn't you wake me up when I was sleeping on the couch? And you're like, I'm going to be empathetic. Ricky told me to be empathetic. Now empathy is becoming quite a long road, isn't it? It's becoming a road maybe we don't want to go down. And now you kind of want to be judgmental. Like, no matter how empathetic I be, you seem to keep taking advantage of me. I'm giving you an inch by being empathetic, and you're taking a mile. And that's why it's important. You got to understand that boundaries and empathy can exist at the same time, right? Two things can be true at the same time. I can be empathetic for your situation, and I can also tell you that the way you reacted to your situation isn't okay. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You can always be empathetic to someone's situation. How they react to that situation, you don't always have to be so empathetic for. And so when you bring empathy into your life, make sure that you bring it in parallel with boundaries, and make sure when you exercise empathy, you can really come across as a really emotionally intelligent and a really good leader and a good person. And people can be wowed by the amount of empathy that you have in your heart. And they're like, oh my God, I want to be like you. Don't be so empathetic that you're a fucking fool. Don't be the fucking laughing stock joke of your family because you're so empathetic that you're a fucking fool. And that's my piece of advice to you. You got to know when to cut it. And I'm not telling you that you have to be like, I think a good use of empathy is like, think about immigration. That's a topic that like empathy is like really hard on. Like, should people be allowed to be in our country that aren't here? Like, Canada wouldn't allow me to live there. But then also think like, but they're also fleeing their country because it's so bad. It's not their fault they were born in that country. Really good topic to try to be empathetic about, because it'll challenge your mind. Like, how empathetic can you get, right? How empathetic can you be? And so challenge your mind with those levels of empathy, and continue to bring empathy into your family. Explain to your family what empathy means. And I think that bringing it into your child's life is, as they grow, my plan with Laguna is to just really put her in the shoes of someone, right? And so if she comes home and she says, Susie smells like shit, and sits next to me in second period, I might say, like, have you ever thought about what it's like to live in Susie's house? I've never, every time I've seen Susie's dad, he's always in a rush. I heard his wife died. You know what I mean? Like, he's probably trying his best, and there's 3 kids, and the wife passed away, and maybe he didn't have time to tell Susie to shower, or maybe he didn't have time to get her more soap. Like, I hear they're really poor. Like, I shouldn't use poor, but they're stuck in poverty. And I want you to, like, I would put her in Susie's shoes, right? And then maybe she might think like, oh shit, like, I didn't realize that Susie was going through that. Like, all of these things happened to Susie before Susie showed up and she smelled like shit. And so you have to put your child in all those situations. You have to say, well, what if this happened to you, and this and this and this and this and this happened to daddy, and this happened to, like, where would you be? Do you think you would be better off than Susie? Do you think you would smell better than Susie if I never bought you soap because I was poor? She might go, I guess not. I go, huh, I wonder what we could do for Susie then. And maybe then we go get a gift basket for Susie, and we sneak some soap in there. But I think the point is like, you got to always invite your kid to think like, well, what would it be like to be in their shoes though? In a way that isn't like, don't say that, like smack their mouth. Like, don't say that. Like, you got to give them empathy behind it. I think as parents, we've been known, parents have, at least my older generation, have been known to just like, yes, no it, black, white it. Like, don't say that shit, or like, shut the fuck up. Like, you're being rude or whatever. And maybe not given the excuse of like, are you using empathy when you use those words? You know what I mean? So I think that the next generation of us being better parents, because this is the Better Parents Club, I think that the next generation of better parents is like bringing them in on empathy, what it means to be in someone else's shoes, and how maybe you can think like, oh, I'm walking their walk, and it's not so fucking easy when I think about it. So maybe I would be in the same situation as you. That's my spiel on empathy. I'm going to link donation fires for the LA fires and the people that lost their homes. Try to be empathetic. Could you imagine? All right. Love you guys.